So, hello everybody. I'm Pablo Correa Gomez, and here I have Markus Göllnitz. I am one of the current paper maintainers. Markus is doing an extraordinary GSOC, improving the UI and the touch and mobile support for the app. So we are going to talk a bit about the history, what's happening now, what will be the future of the document viewer in GNOME. I've split our time frame in two parts. So for talking about the past, we are going to talk about this graph again and again and again. This graph is basically the number of commits per year in our main branch, which basically means a couple of forks through the history. The line at the end is where we are currently now, so the present. Everything behind is the past, and we can differentiate a bit of the past before Q and I, Q, who is the other current maintainer, got involved, and then everything that's behind. Yeah, so basic timeline of the project. If we want to talk about document viewers in GNOME, there's been actually several forks through the years. Evince started, or the first commit in history is an import from XPDF, which it's more or less as old as I am, so I can't tell much about it, apart from the fact that it was one of these first projects for PDFs in the Linux ecosystem. It included both the backend, so doing all the rendering, and the front-end UI, and at some point it was split. One part of it became Poplar, which is the PDF backend that we are still currently using, and the other evolved into different apps. And we can see in this red line with the peak in the number of commits is the first Evince release. So after some years of different imports, some tags of something that was called GPDF, I guess GNOME PDF. Evince started in 2005, and well, it's still a live app, but I mean, it's still alive, but will probably be replaced quite soon by papers. So lasted for us for 20 years, which is actually pretty impressive. In the middle, there were quite some big milestones, because when Evince was first released, there was a GTK2 app. So we had GTK3 and GTK4 releases that happened in between. But it's a bit sad to see that despite those things, the trend's still going downwards, right? So it doesn't talk super well about how the whole GNOME community has kept this app alive. So a bit of what happened there and why. Basically, in this 2005, with this big peak, there was this person called Carlos García Campos that did the heavy lifting of the project. He's got close to 1,500 commits, followed by something around 400 commits from both Germán, who's the still current maintainer of Evince, Q, and me, which are the current maintainers of papers. So, like, there was this extraordinary peak in development back in 2005. And then things started going downwards. And you can see that despite maintainership being changed, so at this point, Germán started contributing, Germán, who's the current Evince maintainer. At this point, Carlos said, OK, it's over. His last commit, his last release, and then he gave it over to Germán. The trend still continues downwards. That meant that there was no serious work done in Evince during like the GTK transition. Apart from doing a transition, there wasn't really UX work. There wasn't really cleanups. There wasn't modernization of the code base. And neither that happened with GTK4. It had to be around 2021, 2022, when Q opened a merge request to port the app to GTK4. And then I got later involved. When we started realizing, OK, there's so many things that didn't happen for so many years that we actually have to do lots of cleanups. And we started doing things like, gclear pointers. So we started to actually just touch the backend, break lots of things. We broke more things that we would have liked, but try to actually modernize the app so that when you bump into those, into the code base, you wouldn't find things that were reimplementation of glib that had been in glib for the last 15 years. Or like you bump into, we bumped into some deprecated widgets that were deprecated in GTK 3.2, something like that. So that required a lot of work. And a bit for the context, let's say this is Q, this is me, and this is Markus. So we are basically kinda as old. I mean, Markus is even younger than Evince itself. So a part of the reason why we are actually really interested in this app and we want to move it forward, and we are doing lots of breaking work to actually modernize it, is because we want something that fits our needs. Maybe that's a bit of a cultural change, but we want something that works in 2024, in 2024, something that is native, and something where people can actually get involved and don't think of this history, but actually, yes, get involved and contribute because you know the platform, you know the widgets, you know the design patterns and the coding patterns. So yeah, what happened? So when Q and I started getting involved, there was not that much maintainership like we've seen going in Evince. That led to something like a friendly fork after 2 years of us trying. That was quite unfortunate, I have to say. We tried to manage it nicely, so we didn't completely break bridges, or burn the bridges and so on. But we still lost more than 10 years of experience that Herman had in the project. So we actually, I mean, we can ask him some questions, but he's not part of papers. He's willingly not part of papers. We had to also put a lot of work in rebranding, like building a community again, like doing this unnecessary task of going through the incubator process that it's going to take quite a while, because of course lots of things broke with the GTK4 port, and there's now quite strict requirements for that weren't in place 2 years ago. So yeah, we put all this energy to get things into the right way, and I want in this presentation to have this open question of could we have done better as the GNOME community. I mean, as that graph shows, I'm pretty sure some of you that had been contributing for longer knew that Evince was a problem, knew that it was seldomly maintained, that there was basically one maintainer being alone for many, many years. Could have the GNOME community done something to help him? Could have the GNOME community step up processes to actually identify we have a core app that's unmaintained? How can we improve this? One of the problems that I bumped into this process is, okay, the release team didn't actually have powers. So I was really in contact with them, but they couldn't do anything more than, well, fork it. I was like, how can you, which are like, the technical representation of the project, tell me like, oh, fork the app because we can't do anything. So is that something that we should change? That always comes with a risk, no? Giving them power has other consequences, but yeah. Unfortunately, we have more apps like this. So I'm also bringing this up because we have Totem, and we have a couple more apps that might be in a similar situation, and some other core apps that maybe are not there yet, but maybe would be there in some years if we don't do something. Maybe can we learn something from this process? Those are open questions. I don't really have an answers, but like I thought we'd put them here. So yeah, in 2024 we forked Evince into papers. We basically did, okay, we are gonna land the GTK4 port, and we are trying to get these things changed. So we are gonna do like all the cleans and refactor that we want. We are gonna try to improve the UI, and we are gonna try to get more people on board in the project, because that's what we need. Because we did this fork, so it was like, okay, now we don't have any responsibility towards anybody. We had this drastic mentality, or like, okay, better regress than install, so we will break things. I mean, that's the thing. And then that's also a way to realize if somebody complains that we broke something, that means we need to fix it, and that's useful. If we broke something, and then we realize 1 year later that it was broken, and for a year nobody complained, well, actually, we don't have to fix it. We can just remove it. And the thing is that a project that has this 20 years of history, or more than 20 years of history, you bump into quite a lot of those things. Not the ones you would think, but there's quite a lot of those problems. And then, there's also some libraries that we consider them unstable. And now, basically, handing over to Markus, that is here because of that mentality. And
Yeah. And that mentality is sitting down and taking a picture of your screen to visualize that you're working on it. And I took this picture yesterday, and not just visualizing it. I didn't do anything yesterday. But I joined this project. I'm a Google Summer of Code student working on it. And one thing I want to say specifically, that I followed the project briefly before that, and I do this altruistically because of personal use cases that weren't considered when Evince started. And I want to thank you and Shu for when you want to get people involved, new ducklings, you have to have people around that help. And what are we doing? We're doing better than Acrobat Reader, I hope. We have new. That is one thing. You have to start somewhere, and I want to thank the design team. And I think those are mostly the current ones. Mostly thanks, Tobias. You're not here, but thank you anyways for doing this. That helps a lot. We have something to move, to look forward, and that is something, a vision, a UI vision for papers that we need, because we cannot just say we want people to get involved and don't know what we actually want. We want an application. We don't want people to be involved for no reason. And if you are using it, the chances that you want to help us make it a bit better from time to time are probably higher when you actually want to use it. And so we want to work on using it, and that's what I'm doing. The first thing, look down there. Those first appeared 5 years ago in mockups, and they are already implemented for 2 months now. 2 months, I think. And look how beautiful this new sidebar is looking. But to talk about a bit about that, the things behind it, to get there where we are now, things have to be moved around in papers, because the application is worked around the concept that the window is the king, the window does everything, and if the window doesn't do it, the magic widget papers view does everything. And if you want to hand something from A to B, it's a signal, and that slows down implementing new stuff. But be assured, they are not moved the signal somewhere else. Actually, what is done now, we have something like context, like a backend, actually a proper backend, that like a search context, an annotation context, a bookmarks class, and those things, they don't even know that widgets exist, don't know of GTK, and so we can actually do some really great stuff, like a beautiful new annotation view because of
for whoever is asking, that's implemented already.
Yeah, that landed. This thing here, that landed last month, and it's not done yet. Here is something that will land shortly, hopefully. It's implemented, but not yet. Did not land. We will have also a beautiful new attachment context. Yeah, actually attachment context, the backend, and a new attachment view. So every single sidebar except one is now redesigned, and everything works on mobile. But I said every but one. What I've also done in the recent months, whenever I met people, I asked them 2 questions. Question 1 was, whenever they had a document open, I asked them if they would assume that when they transferred their document to another device, that A, they would see their bookmarks, or B, they would not. And I also asked them if they would send this document to someone else, if they would expect those bookmarks to show up or not. What they do not know is that you cannot do those independently. If you say yes to this, you have to accept that yes to this and no both. But they don't know, and I don't want them to know. And I asked them the questions. I randomized them. Actually, what I found funny is people told me that I phrased the question in a way that they assumed I was pointing them to one of the answers, but they all assumed a different answer. That is one thing I want to work on next, is the bookmarks. So the question is, do you want the bookmarks to be part of the document, stored in the document? That's why I'm asking this. Do you want them stored in the document, or do you want them stored somewhere else on the disk, so that whenever you open the document, the bookmarks are loaded? And what? Yes. The answer is yes. To what? Yes. The answer is yes. Thank you. Thank you for the answer. You're plenty helpful today for paying my lunch. And what I want to say.
That's a beautiful search context.
It's a beautiful search context, that is correct. And that's what was actually one of the first things I worked on. Search is faster. The first thing I did was basically doubling the speed of the search, because because of some weird things that it decided to render every single widget every single time a search result appeared, basically. So just doing it in the end resolved having tons of signal callbacks blocking the main loop, because there are things on the main loop, like everything, single-threaded, and that are the things I worked on as part of my Summer of Code project, and I want to thank everyone that helped me do this. For example, if you wouldn't have asked me if I wanted to work on it, and if I wouldn't have talked to Sonny last September about Summer of Code, and you two wouldn't have convinced me, I wouldn't have done it. And I think, and in the end, I wouldn't have worked on papers. And even though I talked about a lot of things that had to change to get the actual UI parts in, it's super fun to work on it, and I enjoy it. And hope you will have a great PDF viewer in the future, and a project you enjoy contributing to, because it's a beautiful, cozy environment that is now created. But things are not done yet. Things have to move.
Okay. So, yeah, one of the big reasons at Markus presented is because he's possibly done everything that's obvious, all the changes that are obvious. He's also done a lot of changes that are not obvious, and that just have to do with the backend. But basically, Q and I have been just working on like things that nobody realized, and it's actually cool to have somebody to actually show results for this work. But for the future, what do we want to do? There's actually one papers, same as Evince, is not just an application, but it's an application and two libraries, libdocument and libview. The first one, libdocument, is an abstraction around different document types, because papers and Evince can open like 15 different kinds of documents. I don't know, more than I have ever actually used. And libview basically just allows other parties, for example, Sushi. I don't think we have Cory here, but Sushi to just get a preview of a document. We had another question that is possibly also rhetoric. Should they be public? I hope the answer is no, or like not all of them at least. But for now, they are public and unstable, so we can see if somebody will actually ever use them. Talking about the future for libdocument, so this is one extraordinary piece of software. They designed it 15 to 20 years ago, and we haven't really had to touch it. What we had, however, is we have removed, and we will remove more document formats, at least DVI, XPS, and TIFF. I'm not sure if any of you has ever opened a multi-page TIFF or an XPS document. I would guess most of you don't even know which some of these formats are for, or at least on the context that they are used in papers. So those will disappear. If you have a use case for them, we might have put them in an external repository, or like, please really come to us because we don't want to maintain them. On the libview, then we have this similar situation. We have a very vast public API that nobody uses, and we want to reduce it. We have had a couple of different issues. So basically, we had the, like as Markus said, there had to be a lot of work done in the backend. We had this widget, which it was 10,000 lines of code, and did the whole integration just by itself. We've reduced it something like 20%, but there's still lots of work to be done. And then we have to rework the way things work in the background. We have this PPS jobs, which is an abstraction around a thread pool, which if you have used papers and you have realized at some point it lags a bit, it is basically because of this thing. We can optimize it, but what we would really want is we would really want to redesign it. I'm not sure if we have Philip and Emmanuel Ibasi around here and they're going to stay the rest of the days around, because I would really like if somebody that actually knows glib, like, and all this API design work can actually help us to design something that's better. To design something that integrates with Rust and something that will allow us to do things in parallel without having to do our own abstraction about that glib thread pool. There's also a couple more things that we should improve, like rendering. Yes, please.
Sorry. And to talk about the view specifically, one thing you did not mention, I think, but it's important to consider. Currently, the view is one widget that draws itself. It has no sub-widgets, so every single page is drawn like this, and it does some style context shenanigans to be able to so that you can style it with CSS. You should not do that in GTK4. You can do it, and it's deprecated, and that is something that has to be done sometime in the future. I have some ideas how to make this work with the current way, but
yeah, it's really hard to debug, which is the other big problem we have. And otherwise, we have a couple of small things that this is possibly not that relevant. So the really big thing that we really want to get to is we want a tab view. It's in the mockups. I think everybody has, like, there was an issue opened in Evince for 10 years about that. Sorry? Longer than 10 years.
It's the one thing I did not touch, but is in the mockups. So
it's in the mockups. We want it. For that, we have the problem that each papers window is its different app, so there has to be a lot of things work around it. So including, for example, isolating different documents from each other. So if one crashes, it doesn't get the whole application with it. So it will take a long while. I would say at least a couple more years, but we are working towards it. We want it, if you're interested. Then we also want more maintainers. I'm hoping he joins the boat after GSOC is finished. But otherwise, if you're interested in this, you want to help, we are very welcome to get contributors. We want to be community friendly, and we want to interact.
That's not just a phrase, it's true. They are.
So yeah, you're more than welcome. I don't have a thank you slide, but thanks everybody that has been contributing and helping the last months. Starting from Markus, but also Alice Mikalenko, Chris, and like Maximiliano. There's been lots of people in the last months, random contributors that I had never heard of, that just jumped on the board of our app even when it wasn't still in core. Thank you very much to all of you. Possibly this wouldn't have been possible without you. And yeah. Not sure if we have time for questions, but you decide. Two questions.
Hooray. So by the way, the issue is from 2005, the tab support, but but yeah, that's okay. You were talking about whether you should make things private or public. So usually in the library, usually what you want to do is start things private, and if somebody really needs it, you can make things public. So that might be one of your answers. But I guess one of the other things I'm wondering is, what does it still make sense to have libdocument and libview? But are there people who actually need that, and can we maybe, worst case, just find the main people who use it and then try to figure out a much smaller API with them, or just drop those libraries directly?
So what we did is, I removed it because it looked too ugly, but we have a macro. So if you want to right now use the libraries, we have this macro that says, I know the paper's API is unstable, and I have talked with the maintainers. So I really hope that if somebody shows up, we actually know of it, and if not, they risk we breaking them. So that's, I mean, we could just make everything private and then work towards it, but we are waiting for somebody to say, hey, oh, I'm using it like this. It's like, okay, well, then we'll enable your use case, and then we see if somebody complains.
Pretty sure you can, for example, at least make libdocument private, because if the only use case you know of is the preview stuff, that can be handled purely by libview.
But thank you. I mean, that's a good idea.
Just a quick question. With the bookmarks,
yes.
If you're trying, like some documents use them for like the table of contents and are pre-populated normally.
The table of document is not the same as bookmarks, and if you abuse them, you are out of luck. Read the specification for PDF and play by it. Use it.
Okay. And thank you very much. That's the two questions.